Hello, everybody, and thank you to be here. Welcome to this first Meet the Expert in 2023. The topic today will be the crime analysis and crime analysis in a specific country, a very important country. So thank you very much, Lorraine, to be here with us as first expert for this series during 2023. And thank you also to Sam Steiner, that is president of the European Association of Crime Analysts, because this Meet the Expert is made in cooperation with this very important association in Europe. So Sam, thank you. I hope you all will enjoy this first Meet the Expert, and I hope to see you again in all the other events of this series. Thank you, and enjoy. Sam, the word to you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much. Also, warm welcome from my side on behalf of the European Association of Crime Analysts, a very young association. Just a few months ago, we started promoting this association, setting up a little website, and we have around 470 members at the moment. Hopefully, the number will increase. One of the most important parts is organizing together with the European Forensic Institute these Meet the Expert sessions. And just for everyone who's online now, please take your time, check out the website. There are some information for you, especially about the upcoming in-person conference next October in Malta. Let me also say a warm welcome to my not only my friend, my soulmate, I would say, Lorraine Klassen. I know her now for many years. She is like my sister, I would say. I never had one, but now I have one since the time I know her. And I'm very excited about her presentation. So Lorraine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sam, and for all of you guys, all your efforts to make today happen. I know it was touch and go there for a bit with getting a hold of me and finalizing the arrangements, but thank you for your patience. We are here today, we made it. So I am privileged to share a little bit of what crime analysis is like in South Africa and what stage are we in getting to where we want to be. We're not where we want to be yet. And the most important thing for me when I started with this presentation was there's absolutely no way that I can give you an overview of what is going on in South Africa and with our crime statistics in 45 minutes. So please excuse me, I've narrowed it down. The most important things I think is on here, but it is important for me for the webinar for the attendees to get a little glimpse of the context that we're operating in South Africa. The country is very unique. We come from a history of strife and of conflict, and we are trying to get the country to a safe place along with our constitutional rights that we have, and that every citizen has to be on a level where we can provide not only basic services, but also where we can keep our citizens safe. And for now, it is easier said than done. So I'm just going to start with the topic that we have for today, exploring the crucial role of crime analysis in South Africa, considering the current context and multiple variables influencing crime rates in our country. Now, if you were to list all of those variables and all of the context that's influencing the country right now, and with the upcoming elections, government elections for next year, there's a lot at play. There's a lot that happened the past couple of years that has a big impact on our citizens and our way forward and the quality of life and the cost of living. So it's an ever evolving road that we have to take, not only as citizens of the country, but also us who are responsible for ultimately providing a safe community for our citizens to live in. And that is the biggest challenge that we are dealing with. But I will show you what we have going on. Again, this is a condensed version. So if you do have any questions, please contact me. You can set up a call and I will answer as best as I can. So it is funny when you ask someone, where is South Africa? So it is not in India. It is not in the center of Africa. It is actually in the south of the African continent. There at the bottom. And what I want to show you here is that we're neighboring with a couple of countries, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and then within South Africa, we also have the Kingdom of Swaziland and Lesotho. Now, when we get to the country, our country itself, we have 9 provinces inside South Africa. To the north, we have Limpopo, and that is where all the tourists go for the safaris and to see the wildlife. Then coming down to Mpumalanga, Northwest Province, Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal, Free State, which is more rural, Northern Cape, very rural, and Eastern Cape, and then finally Western Cape here at the bottom. This is the place where everyone wants to come and visit. So when you do come visit, call me. I will give you good advice on where to stay and where not to stay. So about South Africa, just check. Just a little bit of details for you. I don't know how you are in comparing countries with each other, but I thought it wise to just to give you an indication of our land service area. A little bit more than 1.2 million kilometers square population, and this is documented population. So we do have a large number of illegal or undocumented persons in our country, which places a significant strain on job creation, employment for our own citizens. And this is also a contested subject and often leads to violent protest with regards to xenophobia from our citizens towards citizens from outside of the country. Our key economic sectors, mining, transport, energy. Energy is a funny one. I'll come back to that if I remember. Manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture. We have 12 official languages. The currency, which is not worth much, is South African Rand. And then our government is a constitutional multi-party democracy, and that is then in 3 spheres. So that's local, provincial, and national. Important for us here to take into consideration is the unemployment rate, 32.9%. Then our crime statistics. So I'm sure with you guys and your work, the COVID did place a kind of a hamper on the flow of our statistics and how we measure it from 2019. So the 2020, 2021 years, we kind of keep separate. So if we want to compare, we would rather compare them with 2019 where we had no restrictions. And then from this financial year quarter, for the quarters onwards. So the Minister of Police, Minister Bheki Cele, released the National Report of Statistics for the second quarter. So that's July 1st to 30 September of 2022-2023. So it's this financial year that's busy. During this time period of 3 months, 7,004 murders were committed, averaging 76 murders per day in the country. The reported rape cases totaled 10,590 also for this 3 months. So this is worrying in itself. We can kind of stop the presentation here and just talk about it because this is significant, and the importance of this, we want to implore our politicians, we want to implore everyone involved in some way in safety and security to focus on this. This is why we have to do our work. This is why we have to make sure that we are up to standard with the international best practices on how we deal with violent crime. Just to show you, this is the South African Police's stats, and this is the annual crime stats for 2021-2022. So keep in mind what I just said about the COVID years. The last financial year, you can see here on the right, so this was the last calculated, the figures itself, the totals, and then the count difference between the previous financial year and then the change. So all of this are red, all of this have increased, and all of these crimes are serious crimes. So the top is contact crimes, crimes against the person. So that's directly with the offender and the victim getting into contact. And then the total of these contact crimes, crimes against the person for the past financial year was then 607,163. So that is a lot. It was an increase of 71,946 for the previous financial year. So that increase in itself is significant. Total sexual offenses, a massive thing in our country that we are running and campaigning against is rape, sexual assault, attempted sexual offenses, contact sexual offenses. The total again for the last financial year was 6,480. Now we have to also mention here that in some cultures and in some communities, it is frowned upon to go and report a rape, especially if that was committed by a family member or friend. So the underreporting figure for the sexual offences is very, very high. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at this in the broader spectrum of things. Then aggravated robbery, also massive problem in our country with the increases. You can see there the bank robbery increased with 550%. And then just also then to keep in mind that the unemployment rate skyrocketed during COVID. So people were desperate. Not that I'm saying everyone went to rob a bank, but that is significant for us to note when looking back at the COVID years. I just want to show you the murder, the trends over 12 months period that is a bit more relevant for us. And then it's also a breakdown per province, one of the 9 provinces, all of them in the country. So the increase for the last financial year was 5209. And then that brings the total to 25181. Worrisome, troublesome, as mentioned, more than 76 per day. And that is just for an analyst, and I think everyone working in policing, you're kind of deflated. Where do you start? Where do you start addressing this? And then I'm glad that this is an international platform so that we can exchange best practices, although I'm sure we would learn much more from our colleagues overseas. But then also to keep into consideration that we have a lot of variables in our country that you guys might not have. And the trick is to navigate what we do have, what we can use, as opposed to what won't work in our country at all. Serious threats that we are working on and reading of every day. This is a list, it's not the whole list. What I want to ask you guys, everyone attending, is to just go Google South Africa crime and be prepared to sit for a couple of hours just going through the last couple of months or week, even all the news articles that you will see. So most serious, as the stats shows, it's murder. Then our police service has a lot of programs recently on gender-based violence, which is also way too high. Crimes against women and children. Organized crime is massive, it is huge, and then the same argument applies. Where do you start? The organized crime infiltrated the construction companies, the nightlife, the security industry. So poaching as well, drugs, weapons, firearms, it is everywhere that you can think of. There's a gap somewhere for organized crime that can infiltrate any walk of life. There's also political killings that has increased in the last year, Kidnappings, massive problem. A lot of kidnappings of often tourists, not tourists, but not South African citizens, people who come or immigrated towards South Africa, and then being kidnapped for large, huge amounts of ransom money. So that is usually handled very close to the chest of SAPS. We don't get a lot of information. We just get a report, maybe within a 1 week or 2 week or months, that this person was released with an undisclosed amount of money that has been paid as ransom fee. Gang violence, that is a whole other topic on its own. This will, I would love to get into that. It's so interesting and complex, and not organized in the sense of organized crime, but organized in the sense of the structures that they have. They have gangs, for example, in Western Cape, they work with a rank structure. So you have your soldier, your captain, your general, and that, all of that depending on how many people you've killed and how far along you are in the process or lived in the gang environment within a specific gang. There's also a difference between the street gangs and the prison gangs. Inside prison, there's number gangs, so it's 25, 26, 28, and all of those three have different functions, bringing in weapons, daily task, smuggling into prison, and then also mediating between the gangs, which is sort of interesting within the prisons. And then this number gangs is throughout all of the prisons in the country. So it's not only in one prison or in one province or one area, that is all over. And the number rank that you get in prison, that trumps all of the rest that is outside. So massive problem. Violent protests. There was a huge protest last year, I forget the month, in Phoenix in Durban. A lot of people lost their lives. It was looting, it was chaos. The South African National Defence Force was sent in. So once you wait for that spark to flare up, then you have to be ready for mass unrest and killings and violence towards anyone who stands in the way. Then xenophobia, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, with the undocumented illegal people that we have in our country, our citizens, not all of them, but our citizens complain that they take the jobs from them, they take the housing that's available from them, and they then force them out. A lot of times it gets really violent, setting people on fire or breaking down their homes or just pushing them out of the communities. So this is also a significant strain on our policing forces to manage that. Transport, we are dealing with this within our transport with the taxis. For example, we have different taxi associations. There's fights in between the associations on what routes they take, what routes not they take. Again, this may turn into violence. Illegal firearms. Would like to know from our other colleagues if you also experience a mass increase in illegal firearms. We also have a shortage of firearms, for example, in the gang-infested areas, and then which leads to them making claims that they are going to target our policing services for their firearms specifically, just to get that for them to have. Extortion, that goes along with organized crime, hijacking, drug dealing, metal theft. And again, this relates to that energy that I spoke about earlier, just to give you this context that leads to a ripple effect throughout the country. South Africa does not have enough energy to provide to the country at the moment. Well, I say at the moment, but it's coming on the last 5 years already, past years. So what this means is we ration our electricity that goes out to different areas. The last week, or the week before, that's when Sam tried to get a hold of me, we had stage 6 load shedding. So what that means is every 4 hours, the power would be off for 4 hours in specific areas. So that areas rotate. It's not always the same time, but it has massive implications on the economy for the people that have to close their stores, not making enough money to pay the rent of the stores, so they have to close up. And then also for the people working, for example, in retail, if the power is off, they have to go home. There's nothing that they can do at the store, so they're not getting paid. So this is a huge, huge problem that I don't think is going to end sometime soon. Corruption everywhere, throughout departments, throughout provinces, throughout services. It is just disheartening to want to work towards solutions and want to get to on the front foot to get some idea of how we're going to help our communities, and then just to find out that all of the funds that was allocated to that, or some of it, was then taken or stolen illegally with the corruption that is rife in our country. Rural safety, and then, as I mentioned earlier, poaching. This also relates to organized crime, poaching of abalone on our coastal lines, and that is millions. That is millions. Once it's seized, it is very lucrative for the organized crime syndicates, and also difficult to police due to the vast coastline that we do have. Then crime analysis within SAPS. The current approaches driven and influenced by crime analysis that they do have in place currently. They do have a crime analysis officer at each station. However, this might be a role allocated to an officer within a station. So it's not necessarily that this person was trained to do crime analysis functions. However, it's there, but again, due to lack of resources, everyone has to, or anyone can be allocated to do that job on a daily basis. Policing approaches employed by SAPS that can tap into crime analysis for positive outcomes, for positive operations, is the back to basics approach, sector policing, public order policing, intelligence-led policing, partnership, and community-driven policing. Now, we do rely a lot on our community-driven policing, so that's our neighborhood watch. Groups within the different communities specifically, they do amazing work in patrolling and visibility. And they do get to places at times where it's not possible for SAPS to get there in time due to lack of resources, or just the vastness of the country and where they need to get to in rural areas, for example. Policing challenges, I listed a few, however, I think they have a lot more if they would have been in the webinar today. Corruption, disconnect between national and provincial approaches to combating crime. So it seems as if the provincial approaches does not necessarily talk to or link with the overall national approach and instructions, which is making it difficult. So you're sometimes not necessarily certain what you can do and what you cannot do. Political influence in key appointments that's made within SAPS is a factor that we can't leave out at this stage. Lack of resources, vehicles to get to the areas, offices, lack of enough staff allocated to each station. Crime rates, as you saw earlier, it's a lot. And how many people do you need to employ to address all of those murders, for example? Criminal justice system, another problem that we have is how easy it is to get bail for whatever crime you committed. So you can get bail for anything from 1,000 Rand up for quite a serious crime that was committed, which then disheartens our police services as well, because they go to all of this work and effort to catch this criminal only to see him tomorrow on the streets again. Criminal justice system, as I mentioned, apart from getting bail, the criminal justice system is so overloaded with all of the dockets and all of the cases that they need to deal with, that a lot of the cases get thrown out of court just because simply there's just not enough manpower to work on the dockets, to work on that cases, to make sure that there would be a conviction at the end of the day. And then also another problem, as you saw earlier with our map, crimes committed across borders. We do have our neighboring countries, and then also a lot of huge ports that operate daily with thousands of containers and thousands of boats coming in, cargo ships coming in, and that makes it easier, for example, for organized crime, organized syndicates to move, to bring in and to move out drugs, abalone, for example, weapons, anything that you can think of. So that is also difficult to police because of its vastness. And then also, again, this links to corruption for officials. Just letting them pocket. Social challenges goes to the context of our country, what's going on. Culture of violence. It is as if, especially in some provinces and some cities in the country, everyone is on the edge the whole time. The level of aggression is insane. When you can see that on the roads when people are driving, road rage incidents, getting into altercations and getting into fights, assault, GBH. It's common practice at the end of the day to see or to hear about incidents like that. The political context, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on in the country at the moment with political factors and parties that is head-to-head on each other. And the effect is a lot of protests, up to then a lot of campaigning, a lot of promises. And then finally, we'll have to see what happens then in 2024, if there is someone that's going to make a difference. And we hope for the best. Unemployment is listed in almost every slide that I have, just because it has its own ripple effect. It affects housing, it affects the homes, lack of basic services because they can't afford bigger homes. And when I talk about homes, we do have a lot of informal settlements. So it's basic housing. Some do get services, and then the rest do get, but it takes them longer because no alternative housing can be provided, right? So water, housing, unemployment, education, basic rights that our citizens need and require, and by law with our constitutional rights that we have as citizens, that has to be provided to us. Cost of living, everyone knows the prices go up, of food, of electricity, of that we don't get, of fuel for motor vehicles, for water. The inflation rate keeps going up, and there's nothing just to back that up and to bring our citizens on the same level in order to eventually get to a place where that's even. There's no even. And then, as I said earlier, and also this relates on every page, the influx of undocumented illegal persons. That is a couple of million in the country, putting strain on all our services and disheartening our citizens who actually need the basic services. Crime analysis challenges. So for us to be able to do our job, if we were not employed with SAPs, the problems are, if we're on provincial level or private company, access to information. Now we do have laws protecting our citizens and the privacy of their information. It's called the POPI Act. However, it places a massive block on us on what access we can get to basic information on a person, on privacy issues. We cannot go and look up a person based on his ID number, for example, his identity number. because that is information that we aren't privy to by law unless we work for SAPS. Then that's just one of them. There's cyber security law that came into effect, and fire. All of this, I will put links in for you if you do want to read through it. But in essence, it protects the citizen, but for policing, it makes it extremely difficult in order to build profiles on offenders. Operating in silos, I've learned in my time in ISCA that it is not just South Africa. It's a lot of countries and policing services that struggle with this, and lack of communication between state departments on national and provincial level. I mentioned this earlier as well, with the national government that is multi-party disciplinary. So the political parties in one state department does not necessarily share information with each other or with different departments. So it's a whole cat and mouse game on who is getting the upper hand, who has the most information that they can use to navigate the political challenges that is in the country. Operationalizing analysts' outputs, and this is something I think all of us analysts deal with. It is difficult when you put your heart and your soul into a product and it gets on the table of one of the decision makers and it's never looked at. So, but you know that makes a difference. So campaigning for your own products, that is something that we need to get used to, at least in our country, on our side, is you have to back yourself up and push for the decision makers to read, to see, and to learn from the recommendations that we are able to provide to them. The number of threats, you saw the list that I mentioned earlier. Where do you start? What is most important? All of those are intertwined in some way with each other. So it is difficult when you look at the picture, the broader picture of the crime rife country that we have is, do we start at the bottom? Do we start at the big guys? Who is the big guys, the big fish? Once you start at the bottom and you take someone out in terms of getting them into prison, another one takes its place. So it's just a hamster in a rolling wheel and getting nowhere. And crimes committed across jurisdictions and borders. Again, as I mentioned earlier, and this then also links up with organized crime again. Complex context. So all of what I said earlier, I'm sure, is like a drop in the ocean of what everything, all of these aspects contain. So to get up to date with everything, I'm sure we can have a conference of our own of about a week to just maybe get some idea of variables and efforts and inputs that is going on a daily basis. So it is ever evolving, and so is the crime patterns, and so is the type of crimes that's being committed. So it definitely is a challenge for us analysts to work on a long term, or to go back and look at previous years to do linkage analysis and to do comparisons and to see what happened at what timeline, if everything around that crime changes all the time. And the essentials, and this is what I meant earlier in the topic when learning to navigate what we can do and what we know we can do and the impact that we can have, along with all of what's happening in South Africa at the moment. But when you do get focused on one specific type of crime or one area or whatever it is for us, it is important to know the history. Now, every province is different. Every province has its own challenges, but for whatever area you work in, make sure that you know the history. South Africa has a rich history, as I said, good, bad, and you cannot get behind the why crimes are happening or what may influence or what may cause crimes if you don't know the history of that area and the people, the community who stays in there. So for what I also campaign for always is to go to the people. And we learned a lot of this from Jerry Ratcliffe and Lawrence Sherman with evidence-based policing, is if you want to know how to solve the problem, you have to find out what the source of the problem is. Not that I'm saying it's the people, but they will give you context on what to build your recommendations on and what to focus on in your analysis. Also, it's fine if you go to people, but you have to listen to the people. Take a minute, drink the coffee, drink the tea, even if you don't drink tea. I did that last week. And listen to the stories, listen to what they have to say. I know we don't have always the time for this, but it is so rich in information that we can use to provide excellent products at the end of the day. Build relationship with policing agencies and service. I think everyone knows that. This is analysis 101. And this is the fun part for me, because when you get to talking with your peers, you find out, but it's not just us, they have this problem as well. And it is refreshing to talk to people who talk the same language as you. And I said this to someone earlier, and he said, Afrikaans, my first language. And I was like, no, that's not what I meant. I meant all of the lingo, if you will, of crime analysis and policing. And you don't have to explain everything the whole time. Network, this is along with building relationships, and this is where organizations like ISCA and EACA, the new European Association, is so valuable for us. Just to bounce ideas off each other, and also if we talk to each other, a lot of analysts, most that I know of, have an excellent sense of humor, so this is where you can unwind a bit and not sound crazy if you get excited about a murder series. Research. Coming from academia myself, again, this goes to know the history, is do your research. If it is on a topic, if it is on an area, if it is on people, research would only help you build your foundation, especially with us in going forward and building on your context and your framework of what you already know, and then identifying what you don't know. Identify best practices. We don't have to reinvent the wheel the whole time. Thank goodness for that. It's just then identifying those practices and convincing your heads that this is actually something that worked. We don't have to do this and struggle and then it fails. Let's start with what we see, what works. And getting backing from our heads of units, key role players. I'm almost done. NPOs and academia, that is so valuable. That goes along with research and networking, training. If all the analysts or people that I know, most of them that I know, all of us love to learn and we want to continue to learn and we never want to stop learning. So I do encourage that. If anyone wants to study further with people that I talk to here where I work, always encouraging to study further. And then when it all comes down to, I know when we're talking about getting the bad guy and the trends and the time of days and the locations and the days of the week and the analyst notebook, what we ultimately want is to find the who. So we don't want to address the symptoms, we want to address the cause. Who's responsible for the cause? And that's the wish, right? That's the ultimate goal. And when I did this slide, it is the last one, I took a minute and I thought there's something we're forgetting. And I don't know if this is open for someone to leave a message, but if you know what we are forgetting, please let us know. I don't know if I can get or I can see the messages. This is yours. Are you guys able to turn on your microphones? If you have an idea what we are missing.
Hi, Lorraine. Yeah, they're able to type in Q&As in the Q&A section. So we have one question, actually. Are you able to see it or should I read it out?
Got it. I want to know activities law enforcement officers carrying on in other to mitigate some of these crimes, especially crimes against small children. Measures that they're taking to address and to mitigate the organized crimes and crimes against women and children. For women and children, I think the biggest one is education drives to explain or to encourage women to report sexual crimes committed against them, or assault, or any grievously body harm to the women. And that's what I mentioned earlier. That is what's difficult in some cultures. So for women and children, I want to say education with regards to reporting incidents to the police. And then the other organized crime smuggling syndicates, specialized units. And like with all of these very specific crime types, and those that are kind of bigger than a station or SAPS itself, we usually go to, or we see specialized units being formed, especially for that purpose. Okay, and then I'm going to answer myself. What we are missing in all of this is the victim. And that makes me upset sometimes. And I think all of us, we do have a heart for making a difference, right? So we do get all of these stats. We do get the pie charts, we do get the graphs, we do get the dashboards. We see all of these things showing us what happened and the number of times it happened and what's influencing and when it takes place. But it's very, very seldom that you see in crime analysis product that there's any reference made to the victim, the impact it might have on the victim, and the families lost loved ones. With this murder rate, it's insane not to think about the families that lose people that they love. Not that I'm saying it should be a part of crime analysis. Victimology is a thing on its own, we know that, but we should remember why we're doing this. And I know some criminals get a lot of praise, and it's just ego, and everyone wants to read all that kind about them. But please try to remember at the back of your head the name of the victim or the family of the victim. And this is ultimately who we do this work for, not for the criminals, but for the victims and the families of the affected by crime. And that is it. I don't know what my time is like. Good on time. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. We have a couple of questions that are in the Q&A section. I don't know if you can see them.
I'm going to go there now. Okay. Alzet Weideman, you sound South African. Generally, the public opinion of SAPS is quite negative, yes. Do you think it's fair and accurate? Listen, it is unfortunate that there are people who are in the policing service for the wrong reason, for corruption or for purposes of their own, in taking money in order for the docket to disappear. So yes, that does happen, but the majority of the officials do the work on the ground, and that's the people that we work the best with. Those people actually want to make a difference, and then you just kind of work around and manage how you then approach the people who are not quite on that level and have ulterior motives in doing their job. So it is negative. We read it every day. I do think there's going to be a spotlight on policing and SAPS, in particular with the next election coming up. And then yeah, I don't like to say we have to wait and see, because in that time that we have to wait and see, there's work that needs to be done. And there's good people there who can do the work. Andre Jordan, also South African, I think. Lorraine, any research being done in terms of cybercrime situation? Is specifically in retail? Yes, I do know of some. I can put my email address somewhere. You should just help me to find in the chat, and then you can email me and I will forward you information. There's a lot that has been done already, but also technology evolves the whole time. So you have to keep up to date with what's going on there. Relationship of citizens with Gov South Africa and DAO for Gov that worked for all the different crimes occurring in the country. Anonymous attendee, that's a very good question. And I think on the level of between politicians themselves and NPOs, that battles gets fought every day. Lot of problems within the government. I know our current president's currently being investigated, and our previous president was investigated, and then a couple of cabinet members of the government has been or is still under investigation. So how can you not be despondent with the people that's supposed to rule the country? Again, it's not everyone. There is people who want to make a difference, and they have to be commended for their hard work. I'll say to Weideman, how effective do you think social media is in providing an alternative manner to find out about? Okay, without breaching the POPI Act. Okay, so that is a very good question. So there is training, I think, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, that IAGA also provided or it was in the conferences, we got that seminars a lot, where we get trained on how to use social media without breaching the POPI Act. Now, again, it's a very, very fine line. What your measures should be, will this stand in court? If it's not, then if you have that information, fine, but then you should be able to build something on legal terms and on legal grounds to provide to the court to show as, or to the police detectives as evidence. But ultimately it has to hold in court, and that is, I think, where a lot of the cases get thrown out as well. But yes, there's ways and means, and there's tricks of the trade for social media to use that. It is a lot of fun. I love it. It's a bottomless pit of linking and checking and cross-referencing. It takes time. It's a lot of fun, but it is possible. I think that's the last one. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you so much for also for answering. I would love to add a little bit on the last question of Alsed. I think in most of the Western countries, we do have the same legal situation. So you're not allowed to active contact people with a fake profile or something like that. But everything what you can get anonymous, it's not against the law. So if I'm going on the internet, joining Facebook or Instagram or whatever, everything what everyone can get is open, is free, is not against. I don't know what POPI Act means, but I think it's something about data protection, privacy protection. Yes, and it's the same in all over the Western world. So open source intelligence means finding free, accessible information anywhere in the world. It's not only social media. It could also be a book or a newspaper or whatever. unless you're not doing something against privacy, then it's more than good. But it's not evidence. It's just, let's say, a little or sometimes a bigger help to find evidence. Evidence itself, it isn't accessible on the internet because you never know if that's the true or not. This is what I wanted to add. Anyway, coming back to you, thank you again, Lorraine, for joining us. It was really great, and I'm pretty sure there are many questions upcoming. And for the last words, I'll leave the floor and handle it over to Andreas.
Yes, thank you very much, Lorraine. Thank you to you all. And it was really, really nice presentation, very, very interesting. And I'd like to say thank you again, of course, and I hope to see you all again for the next Meet the Expert, for the next events like Editoria, and you will find more information about the new events that will be in the European Forensic Institute website, of course, and in the website of the European Association Crime Analysts. Thank you very much again, and have a nice day or evening. Thank you, Lorraine, in particular. Bye.